Well, it's in 32 minutes past the top of the hour. Thank you for staying with us right here, TV 47 Weekend. Now, I want to get into the meat of the conversation tonight, and today marks the end of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And real quick, I'll introduce the guest. Earlier on, I had said that she's a refugee, and I'll have to clarify that she's a refugee protection officer and working at Mawazo Alumni. Thank you for making your time, Judy.
Thank you so much for having me at TV 47.
Right.
Yes.
Now, before we actually get into this conversation, I want us to take a look at a story that was done by Sylvia Nyongesa. Now, as the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence end today, activists have attributed challenges in obtaining justice as the biggest challenge in the fight against gender-based violence, since most cases are withdrawn from the courts due to a close relationship between the victim and the perpetrators. Now, the Ministry of Public Service, Gender and Affirmative Action has called on all Kenyans and stakeholders to unite in the eradication of gender-based violence cases. Let's take a look at that. That will form the basis of our conversation this evening.
In a statement, Public Service and Gender CS Aisha Jumwa has called on all Kenyans, government and private agencies to unite in the fight against gender-based violence in order to ensure gender equality and eradicate cases of gender-based violence. Jumwa has also committed to work hard to achieve the agreement between Kenya and Generation Equality Forum to eradicate new cases of gender-based violence and FGM by 2026. A report released by the United Nations Women last month showed that 5 women lose their lives every hour as a result of violence meted on them by close relations such as family and lovers. In Kenya, cases of gender-based violence have become rampant, Kirinyaga County reporting an increase in the cases among couples. Administration Police Commander in Kirinyaga, Sitna Faraj, has warned married couples against ignoring threats issued by their partners during domestic disagreements.
Mtu akikutishia maisha, usikubali akutishie maisha tumeka, unangojea, piga report police. Mtoto akicheza ujue mali yuacheza na nani. Na sisi zile hizi vitu zinafanyika, ni sisi familia ndio tunafanyia watoto na majirani wale tunaishi nao.
Today, Haki Africa, a non-governmental organization, kicked off a tree planting exercise in informal settlements across the country to celebrate the milestones that have been made in fighting crimes against humanity, including sexual and gender-based violence.
1 million trees for 1 million human rights violations conquered. The SGBV cases that they have conquered.
Sylvia Nyongesa, TV 47.
Right, thank you, Sylvia Nyongesa, for that. Now, Judy, you've been listening to this particular story. I think before you actually get to that, who is Judy? And then why 16 days of gender-based violence, and what has been done so far?
Good. So Judy is a PhD student at the University of Nairobi. I'm currently doing my research on gender relations in climate-smart agriculture for household food security in Kenya. I'm also a Mawazo alumna. Mawazo is an institute that supports women under 40 who are PhD students to undertake their research by mentoring them, funding them. And so I'm proud to be an alumna. I'm currently working in the refugee space as a refugee protection officer, and we are doing various things in that field. Right. So that in a nutshell is Judy.
So basically some few months from now I'll be calling you Dr.
Let's hope so.
Let's hope so. As a refugee protection officer, you've definitely traversed the country, you've had these stories. What's the whole cases, who are mostly affected?
We cannot put a finger at who is most affected, but we can work with statistics. It is written that 38 to 47% of women and girls have gone through gender-based violence once in their lifetime. So also, why I cannot say we cannot put a finger is because majority of the men do not report GBV incidences.
And we'll definitely talk about that definitely extended. Last month was, the Men's Month and the whole Men's Mental Awareness Month, and we had these conversations.
For sure. And so maybe if we saw them coming out to report this, then we would be able to say that these statistics that are on the table are actually correct.
All right.
Yes.
So basically, as as a young researcher also, what is the whole, your research on all this as a PhD student and researching on all this, what are we basically seeing on the research?
My research doesn't focus specifically on GBV. My research focuses on climate smart agriculture for food security. And one of the 3 major causes of GBV is hunger. And so once we don't have food security as a country, then it is not possible for us to eradicate GBV. So hunger and GBV go hand in hand. And my research generally talks about how women, boys, girls, and men are affected differently with the technologies and that are there in agriculture that affect food security. And so the disparities that are there that bring the gap that affects us not to attain the food security that we wish to. And so now, like I said in a nutshell, hunger in one way or another causes GBV, because hunger is as a result of poverty. It makes women and girls, majority of them, to be vulnerable. We've seen cases being aired mostly about women lacking sanitary towels and them exposing themselves to sexual work. They are more vulnerable and they are likely to be victims or survivors of GBV if they are in poverty or if they're hungry.
Right.
Yes.
And because definitely people are always curious, the whole 16 days, you can all shed light on that. Why 16 days? And so far it has been happening over the years.
Yes.
What has been your highlight for the past 16 days that are concluding today? We'll definitely be having these conversations even moving forward. But then so far for this year, the 16 days, what has been your highlight?
It is a sad scenario that majority of these activities are spearheaded, or NGOs, non-humanitarian organizations, they run with it. They run with the idea. We wish to see the government in the forefront, and my highlight is the humanitarian space. We really see a lot of activities on the ground when it comes to this 16 days of activism. 16 days of activism began in 1991 as a campaign to eradicate or eliminate harmful practices against women and girls. And my highlight has not yet come, and I would say that because GBV is not a woman issue. We are seeing many men coming into the limelight to report about GBV. And so my highlight would be when we see men incorporated in these discussions. Like if you see the theme for this year, it talks about women and girls. Yeah. Can we see men also incorporated in these discussions? And so when I see that happen, that is going to be my highlight. How
best should we be having this kind of conversation? Even bringing men on board, how best should we be having them to the grassroots levels?
When we are having forums, majority of the times people who are attending these forums are girls and women. But the people who are perpetrating this, according to statistics, a majority of them men. So if we eliminate them from these discussions, if we don't bring them to the table, then how is it we are incorporating them? Even the title itself eliminates the man. So can we see the man in the title also? If you ask someone, just a random person in the streets, what gender is, they would most probably associate it to women and girls. But gender incorporates also men and boys. And if we see that happen, then we are going to achieve more and faster than we imagine.
Definitely.
Yes.
And right now the government is building more safe houses for to actually incorporate the victims of gender-based violence. What's your take on this?
Safe houses is a very good idea. We have this also in the refugee setup. And my question has always been, in as much as we admit these people, for how long and what is the exit strategy? Because majority of the times when one is admitted into a safe house, we are given approximately 6 months for a case management process to have taken place and for their cases to have been resolved. And so once we take them back to the community, are we taking back are we taking them back to the survivor, to the perpetrators? And so are they likely to experience this again? So are we addressing a short-term problem, or are we also addressing the long-term problem? But generally speaking, the safe houses is a very good idea, to be commended.
And also, speaking of the whole exit strategy, something that the government should be focusing on, the financial aid that the victims will be after they leave the safe houses. How sustainable are they going to be after they leave the safe houses?
For sure. About finances, we have safe houses that have financial trainings that support them once they go back to the community. But like I said, the funds, are they there? Like, for example, you've trained me on financial management. You've given me a small capital to begin a small program or project. Are we having monitoring and evaluation of this project? Or are they just going to run it for a week and then it dies? So the sustainability bit of it is also questionable. But we can always begin from somewhere.
Right.
Yes, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step.
Let's talk about the whole education, and this even reflects to when you talk about, for example, HIV, and it brings up the whole, should it be taught in schools? And is this something that is taught enough in schools? The gender-based violence, and the little kids who are later going to be in the statistics that you're mentioning. Are they taught enough about all this? And because they definitely see jana dadi alichapa mam, but they don't know how to process that. They're young kids, so they probably have that in their minds, and then later on they'd be like, all right, maybe it's cool, dadi akichapa mam, so they don't know how to process this. How do we tap into these little kids as young as they are? Should they be taught about the whole curbing gender-based violence?
Wow, that's a very interesting area of focus, and I think you've just read my mind. It's a question of debate when we are talking about what we teach in schools. I remember a joke we make, I don't know if you make it too, tunasemanga. What did some history we learned in school help us with? We learn about South Africa. Somebody made a joke that I might even never go to South Africa, maybe.
I'm a Camilla Vasco da Gama.
Exactly.
I've never used that in probably trying to, maybe wanting to visit the Vasco da Gama pillars. But then as a journalist, I'd use history, but not biology, per se.
And titration in chemistry.
But anyway.
Yeah, so incorporating such discussions into our education space is a really important aspect. But are these teachers also that are going to teach these students empowered enough? So it also begins from our training institutes. I'm very glad the other day they revised entry points for the teachers, which is a good place to begin. And then what are we training these teachers to train these kids? Because it is what they are taught in school that they're going to implement once they are employed in the schools. So it's a whole line, it's a whole chain of us making improvements. First, let's make the teacher to be a wholesome package, so that as they are going into the schools, they are able to deliver whatever it is we want to see. It's very important for us to bring on board discussions about human rights. Our children, do they know their rights? Do they know that it is actually their right to go to school in the first place? Do they actually know that it is their right to report when something like GBV happens to them? And where is it they are reporting?
Indeed, yeah.
Because I can remember with my own example, I actually learned about the reporting mechanisms for SGBV or GBV in general when I was an adult. And not even an adult, when I started working, that's when I understood the reporting mechanisms and what I need to do if something happens to me. So does a girl know that in case I am raped on the roads, I'm not supposed to take a shower, I'm not supposed to put my clothes in a polythene bag, I'm just supposed to report as I am, or just take off the clothes and put them in a brown envelope for the evidence not to be tampered with? And so that's a very interesting discussion you brought about. And if we see this implemented, then I'm pretty sure we are going to make milestones, because we are going to have an empowered population. And like we were just discussing before earlier, the greatest percentage of perpetrators is between 18 and 33 years. And so if the perpetrators are between 18 and 33, that means the survivors are more likely in the same age. And so having them educated in school about reporting mechanisms and having them empowered at a younger age definitely is going to go a long way.
Right.
Yes.
Let's talk about the policies. Do we have, because we definitely know how to make good policies, but then now the implementation of these policies is one big hurdle. Where, in your many years of experience in working with victims and all this, has the implementation been done?
Well, I'm just going to answer that with an example. We all know that we have gender desks, a very noble initiative that was begun by our government. But walk today into a police station, you as a man, and say that you were beaten up by your wife. What is likely to happen? They're likely to laugh at you, tell you that you're not man enough, tell you to go back home and beat up that woman.
It'd be like sipio ungeji
defend when ni mwanaume pia, And so that brings a whole question about, are our officers at the gender desks empowered enough to handle gender-related issues that are reported to them? If a woman today, and that happens a lot of times, if a lady goes to the police stations and reports that they've been beaten up by their husbands, majority of the responses they would get is that's a domestic issue. That tells us in itself that the officer himself is not enlightened, because domestic violence is also an example of GBV. And so if you return that lady telling them that that's a domestic issue to be sorted out with the chief, what are we trying to say? And our chiefs, are they also empowered enough that if such cases are reported on their desks, can they be able to ensure that this lady accesses the justice system and justice is served? And
actually, I was coming to that. And many victims would not want to actually report because they'd say the wheels of the whole justice system is just too slow. I mean, probably a victim might report a case today on December, and then this case will at the end of the day justice will be served 3 years later. So that whole process, talk about the whole justice system in Kenya.
Allow me to use an example of the Dadaab refugee camp, where I have worked for 3 years. The Dadaab refugee camp hosts about 230 refugees. It has 3 refugee camps that each has its own populations. We have police posts in each of the 3, but we only have 1 magistrate court that serves the 3 refugee camps in the Dadaab refugee complex. In a day, we would have, according to statistics, but they're not very recent, because studies is also another major challenge that we're going to talk about maybe in a few. We would have reports of about 5 ladies coming to report about GBV. Not so much of men coming to report of GBV. If 5 report from each of the camps, that's 15 in a day. These 15 cases are taken to the 1 magistrate court. And if it is a minor case, there's only 1 sub-county children's officer to handle these minor cases. And so this is understaffing, and we are expecting them to deliver on time. Are we also expecting too much of them? What is it that we are not doing on our part as government also to ensure that a magistrate court is serving populations that they can actually handle? Maybe we are overwhelming them. Sometimes it's a challenge also to access justice, because majority of the perpetrators, our borders are very porous. So if a perpetrator knows that the case is in court, they just disappear and they go. And once someone cannot appear in court, then we all know that that is not a case. And then it is closed. We also have families of people who are reporting threatened. Like if your family has a survivor and you've reported, then you're most likely to face retaliation from the perpetrator's family. And so people end up fearing not to report. And generally speaking, talking about the justice system, we are seeing improvements being made, but we can actually do better. At least we're having financing now going directly into the judicial service, and we are seeing it being more autonomous in the recent past. And so we hope that this is gonna improve the channels of accessing justice.
And now, the fact that you're on that, your further advice to the government, basically. And what were the other, you know, as a member of an NGO, what are the NGOs doing out there to, you know, curb GBV cases?
NGOs, I don't want to say that I'm commending their job, but...
definitely the challenges that you definitely experience.
Definitely. You want me to talk about the challenges?
If
there are.
Yeah.
One of the major challenges in NGOs is staffing. Of course, NGOs rely 100% on donor funding. And so donor funding comes with limitations. You cannot be having more money going into salaries than into program activities. And so with that, basically, we will have fewer people. Let me talk about the chain that is there with the NGOs. Like, for example, in the Dadaab refugee camp, that's a whole small city of its own. It has all the amenities. We have all the partners there. We have medical partners, we have legal partners, we have child protection partners that deal specifically with minors. And so what I see has been able to work in that kind of setup is the referral pathways. Of course, there are challenges also in the referral pathways, but once a child, for example, has been a survivor of SGBV, for example, they would go to a medical partner.
Okay.
And in the Dadaab refugee camp, that is the IRC. The IRC is the International Rescue Committee. And when they go there, the IRC will take up the case, do the medical bit of it, and make referrals. If it is a minor, make the referral to a child protection agency. If it is an adult, make the necessary referral. Also make referrals to the police for the P3s and the justice, whatever, to begin the process.
Right.
And so the referral system has been able to work correctly. We also have protection, safe spaces, like the protection area that hosts both genders, men and women. We also have the safe haven that hosts only women and children. And this has worked well in terms of ensuring that the survivors are well protected until a durable solution is found for them.
All right, because of time, your parting shots, then we can...
Good. So my parting shot is this. All the partners that are involved, whether government or non-governmental, should come together to ensure that we do not just have policies in papers, that we do not have mere talk. Like, for example, we had a sitting president in 2019 say that we are going to eradicate GBV in Kenya by November of 2022. We would have since tried to see that being achieved. Let's just not have mere talk. Let's see people implementing what it is they're saying. Yes, that would be my parting shot.
All right, thank you very much, Judy Ngina, who is a refugee protection officer right here in Kenya. Thank you for your